And hello everybody, and happy Sunday. Today is March 8th, I believe, 2020, and we are here, Veterans in Politics. We are going to be doing the judicial candidate interviews, and our first guest today is, want to make sure I have the candidate's name correctly here, Yvette Chevalier-Lopez.
Perfect.
Yes, and we're so happy to have you here. I'm the moderator, and we're going to give all the candidates about 1 minute, and I probably go on a little bit longer if you like, but we're so happy to have you here. And so without further ado,
So first off, my name is Jim Jonas. I am the host of Veterans in Politics, and I want to thank you very much for coming in. Can you give the listeners just a quick bio about yourself?
Sure, and thank you for accommodating me today during this daylight savings time fiasco. I really appreciate being here. Thanks for having me. As you said, my name's Yvette Chevalier-Lopez. I was born in Puerto Rico and raised in New York City. I've lived in Nevada since 1981. My first career was as a realtor, but shortly thereafter I was in the school district as a school teacher in 1990, a high school counselor for about 9 years, and then I was the director of social services for an Indian tribe and the assistant prosecutor for an Indian tribe in northern Nevada, Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. Later, I was a corporate attorney for a Mexican international business, and then I went back into child welfare, and I was the manager for the foster care system in Clark County Department of Family Services. Later, I was the administrator and attorney for the Moapa Paiutes, doing lots of social service programs as well, and their court system and their police department. For a short time, I was the intensive case manager for the Ross and Neal psychiatric program for mentally ill felons. The felons from Lakes Crossing would come down, and the program would help integrate them into society. And then I've practiced law in a variety of capacities, mostly family, business, and immigration law. I'm the grandmother of 7 children and the mother of 2 adult children, and the proud mother of 8 canines.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like my other panel member to introduce himself and give a quick bio about himself as well, just so that you have a background of the 2 panel members that are asking you questions.
Hi, my name's Steve Jonas. My affiliation with Veterans of Politics is I am a veteran of the United States Air Force. Served 4 years. And then when I got out, I went into the casino industry. I started in security, but then I made a transition to surveillance. And as of now, I'm the director of surveillance for a Station Casinos property, so a local place. I also have some background working for the Grayton, the Federated Indians of Grayton Rancheria. That's a long one. So I do have some tribal experience, and I do want to say I appreciate that you put so much effort into doing that, because a lot of people don't want to do that sort of thing for Native Americans because there's a lot of regulation, and it's an interesting thing dealing with tribal stuff. So I want to think that, and that's who I am. And
Well, you're welcome. Yes, I worked for tribes approximately 6 years, and it's a challenge, but I loved it, and I still have friends that are part of the Moapa Paiutes, very close friends, great people.
So I guess the first question I have for you is, when you decided you were going to run for judge, why family court?
I believe that in the family court system, we're dealing with all of the types of experiences that I've had in my profession. There's issues concerning children's education. I'm a teacher. Issue concerning mental health issues, domestic violence, drug abuse, sex abuse, what have you. I'm a counselor by profession. I've been in the helping profession pretty much all of my adult working life. I've got almost, I would say, at least 27 years of different jobs, all of them in the helping profession. By nature, when I was 8 years old, I used to walk the dog of a lady that had 1 arm. So by nature, I'm a helping professional. I used to go get groceries for an old lady that couldn't go up and down the stairs. So since I was a child, I've been helping people. And I really see the court role concerning family court as being a service to the public and helping people, because you're dealing with the most precious resource people have, which is their children, their families, their homes, their retirements, and their hearts. So that's why.
So just to follow up on that, one of the things that I have heard from, now I am not a parent myself, so I do not have children, so and I'm not married, so I haven't been a part of, I haven't had any personal experience with family court. However, over the years, I have come across a lot of people that have had experience with the family court, and it hasn't been that great. Can you tell me, if elected, what criteria do you consider, you hear this a lot, best interest of the child? What does that mean to you?
The best interest of the child is a statute that provides guidance to the judges on what factors they are to consider when they're deciding custody of children, or legal joint custody, physical custody, and other matters concerning the dissolution of a marriage, or the parenting agreements of unmarried persons, the custody arrangements. And the best interest of the child involves weighing all of these elements, like who can provide the most stability, who can get along best and provide the most visitation with the other parent, who can provide safety and a good environment for the child, and so forth and so on. And we don't, as judges, have crystal balls. So I can't say that I would be perfect at making that determination. But when you have a history like I do of working with intimate matters of children and families as a profession, you learn what matters. You learn what body language means. You learn what people say behind what they say. And you learn how to read people really well. And so I think that because judges are dealing with a lot of he said, she said, it's not always easy to determine what is the best interest of that child. And I think that most of all, one of the things I see as very troubling, and I can't say that I have the absolute solution, but I have my solution if I'm elected as a judge, because there's nothing preventing me from doing this, is that I believe that when you have a really hard controversy, you have, allegations that are very substantial, that you must lay eyes on that child. And I see that a lot of courts do not. I've had people make all sorts of allegations about the spouse or about their treatment towards the children or their lack of treatment towards the children. And then the judges are like, well, okay, well, we're still going to do this. And so I think that while the courts are directed to always do what is basically a kind of a joint custody as a preference for the state of Nevada, where both parents are involved in the life of a child, there is more work to be done than to just say, well, the Supreme Court says it's better if you have both parents. So both parents, I don't care what the parents are doing to the child. So you got to stop and really consider the best interest and do a thorough assessment. And you can't, I don't believe, make snap decisions, because people will say things in court. I think you have to verify some of that information, be it by sending people out to an evaluation, be it by asking the child to give you an ex parte in chambers, 5-minute conversation, to write you a letter, to see the social worker, to go get counseling, whatever. You can't just believe one parent says this is happening, one parent says that is happening, and we're not there to see what's really happening. So it's a credibility problem in the family courts. And, in the criminal court, you have, reasonable doubt. You have standards of, what are the standards to convict somebody? And then you have a jury. You have a jury listening to the evidence and evaluating. So you have more than just a judge normally when there's high stakes involved, like more than a year in prison, right? But, what bigger stake is there than losing your child? I mean, that's the highest there is in this world, unless that's what you want.
Yeah, I guess my next question to follow up on that is, one of the complaints also that I've heard from a lot of people that have been involved with family court is that the judge appoints what counselor you have to go see to basically discern if that person is fit or things of that nature. if you're elected judge, would you be willing to allow these individuals to be able to seek their own counselors as long as they're certified?
Absolutely, because with what we have going on in the healthcare industry right now, with whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, or health insurance, there are some healthcare plans that only provide you with a certain mental health group. And I don't see the fairness in having a low-income family try to come up with $2,500, $5,000 for a mental health evaluation by counselor XYZ, when perhaps in that list of preferred providers or HMO providers, there is somebody with closely aligned eligibility with qualifications that make them eligible to provide the court with these kinds of services. I think it's a free marketplace, and I think that we have to follow the HMOs and the PPOs for the people that have insurance, to make it affordable, to make it practical, to send people out for their evaluations and their reports from these healthcare professionals, psychological, psychiatrists, counselors, what have you.
Okay, thank you. At this
Sure.
time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Steve Jonas.
Okay.
The question I have is, how do you feel about jury trials in family court?
Recently I went through a conversation with someone online about that, and I feel that while I do not believe that every single case warrants a jury trial, because oftentimes the level of conflict is low or moderate or not severe enough to warrant having this big drawn out trial, I believe that if people hire an attorney and they want a jury trial, that they should be able to have one. I don't, so long as the stakes involved are high. If it's a matter of trying to modify your child support from $1,000 a month to $800, you're not going to get a jury trial. It's going to be basically a formula. What does the formula say you should be paying? How old are the kids? What do they make? It's an assessment of a financial disclosure information, not for a jury to decide. But when it comes to what I consider life or death situations, because sometimes that's what you're doing. When you move a child out of state, when you move a child out of a home, when you move a child to a different adult figure, you are making a life or death decision for them, because they may not make it. They may be in the wrong hands. And so I do rely on other people to listen. I would love to rely on other people, the reasonable man in the community, to listen to the evidence and let them help me. Let them help me make a decision about what should happen with that case. And I also believe that's fair when you have large estates. I'm not a Bloomberg, but if I have a case in my court where the people are millionaires, or not millionaires, but billionaires, and we're talking about, let me use an example, Steve Wynn getting divorced and his wife, and they have billions of dollars in assets. I'm not an accountant. I'm not an actuarial. I would like to have a jury help me decide, how do you divide this property? And what's fair and what's not, and let people argue why they should get this hotel and not that hotel, or whatever the case may be. I would prefer to have less bias in the decision and more reliance on the people. The courts are made by and for the people.
May I ask a follow-up question here on behalf of the people? I'm not a member of the Veterans in Politics, but just the general public. I've always thought that jury trials would be important for family court, just to take, I guess, as a bulwark, defending against liberty type of thing, meaning that judges so often have a tendency to be so totalitarian. They want to be judge, jury, and executioner, the whole thing. But if the fact-finding process is left to the people, won't that remove some of the tendencies of a judge to be a tyrant or that type of thing?
That's difficult to say. I believe that if you are a judge who has the right ethics and the right perspective about your role, that you can use judicial discretion fairly. I do not believe that it is always the case that a jury should be, deciding who buys the health insurance or who buys the diapers or who is the better parent, because that is really why we have family court judges, and why you have a particular set of statutes to follow that help guide you through what is important when you're looking at family dissolutions. And it's not like dissolving a corporation. I understand what you're saying about the whole attitude of, I am a judge and you must do what I want and I have the only input here. That I disagree with. I believe that as a judge, to the best of our ability, we need to be open, transparent. We need to listen more than talk. And we need to give everyone a chance to talk. Now, I can't say that I would give people 20 minutes each because we have a busy calendar. But I believe that anybody in my courtroom that wants to tell me something about their situation, that I need to consider that they get a chance to say so. I don't believe in that approach that, sorry, we don't have time for that. Or that doesn't matter that your 13-year-old is home alone taking care of 5 kids because, it doesn't matter. The court recently said that it's okay, and there's a lot of judges that just don't want to listen and they don't want to evaluate the circumstances. I don't know that a jury is necessarily better because the jury people come in and they all have a very diverse background insofar as how they were raised, what their morals, what their values are, their religion, their experience in a home with a mom, without a mom. For example, I've been on my own since I'm 13, and I was raised in the Bronx. So just imagine, if you know anything about the Bronx, what a little blonde Puerto Rican girl who lived in the streets of New York City as a 13-year-old without a mother and without a father. And I never met my father. I don't even know who he is. So when people come into my courtroom, I'm the judge that would say, if they start talking about addiction, murder, jail time, drugs, whatever, I've seen and heard it all. I'm not surprised by that sort of stuff. But not only have I heard it all, I've seen it all. So it's not like someone can come in and pull the wool over my eyes about stuff like that. I've seen enough situations where children are being abused, neglected, molested, whatever. And so I have an insight into humanity that comes from all walks of life, whether it's the very lowest spectrum, in poverty, to even working with very wealthy people. So I have that range. Do I think that a jury of 6 or 12 people or 7 people can listen and then come to some agreement? Not really, because a lot of them are not familiar with, let's say you have a family and the circumstances are, a particular religious conflict. Maybe they don't know anything about those religions. They can't go out and study on, is it better if you have a New Age mother and a Christian father or whatever the case may be. We have conflicts that are very personal. And I don't like airing personal stuff about kids and families, and then I know there's controversy about sealing records and all, and then making all that public because they're talking about very personal things. A lot of women and men come into the court and they want to talk about the fact that their spouse, be it a man or be it a woman or whatever, same sex, different sex, had an affair on them, and that's why they're here getting divorced. And for the most part, judges in the past would listen to that and they would say, let me hear the story, and not necessarily punish the other person for having the affair, but listen as to what happened. How did this relationship dissolve, right? And care about it. But now they're like, hey, this is a no-fault state. It doesn't matter. And people are shut up and they want to pour their heart out and say because if they tell their story, you may get them to a more cooperative stance at the end of the day because we're focusing on their children. But if you shut them up and say that doesn't matter, then they never get past that. And the entire divorce is based on that underlying tension. But once they say it in public, then the tension is reduced. It's like, oh, your spouse had an affair. Okay, we get that. Unfortunately, it's still the law that we have to look at both who's the better parent with the better finances, the better schools, the better attitude, and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I just have one last question for you. I have a friend of mine that has a case in family court right now, and she's not the only one that I've spoken with that has had this happen to her. Running up court costs. A lot of times, people come into the family court, and the attorney on the other side is maybe that attorney is better than the attorney this other person has. And what ends up happening is the case keeps getting, it just keeps getting pushed back and back and back. And then eventually one of the two, the one that isn't as financially stable as the other one, literally just gives up because they just bury them. So if you were elected judge, what would you do to make sure that it's just not, they don't just keep continuing the case over and over and over again? When is enough to where you finally just have to say, hey, and make a decision?
Yeah, I agree with you that is a prevalent problem. I've had it happen myself. I am a champion of access to justice. You know, as somebody that comes from a mother with a 7th grade education, a grandmother with a 2nd grade education, from poverty, I'm the first college graduate in my family. I understand poverty. And so I do not believe it is fair for someone who does not have resources to go up against someone who has lots of resources and get themselves beat up and put in a position where they have to just give up. That is not justice. That is not access to justice. So I'm not exactly sure how each individual case will go, but you could rely on this. As a lawyer for the last 17 years, when I help people, the reason I'm so poor is because I am quick. I am like, listen, we are here to get divorced, and we're going to get this done very fast, and I do not have long trials, and I do not dilly-dally, and I do not file motion after motion. I go in, file my complaint, get my hearing, say, hey, we need to get divorced, and try to get the matter resolved as inexpensively as possible. Now, when you have those lawyers that want to drag out these cases, and you can decide based on their conduct, on the type of motions that they're filing, you know, that's why we have legal fees and sanctions. If they want to continue to just play games and drag these things out unnecessarily and put some unrepresented person in the hole because they are unrepresented, I won't allow it. I will allow lawyers to present their case, to have their evidentiary hearings, to have their trials, but then whatever time the lawyer has, that pro se litigant is also going to have. And it doesn't matter if they're not the most articulate, I can ask questions. I mean, I can lead, say, hey, tell me about this, tell me about that, tell me about this, and make sure that people have effective translators. I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm not allowed to speak Spanish from the bench because that's not really professional, but I will know if the translator is really portraying the information correctly to the people in my courtroom. And it's not just Spanish people. We have people that speak Tagalog and Chinese and Korean and other languages, but I happen to speak Spanish, so I can help those Spanish litigants get through that process. So, you know, I don't have an absolute answer for you other than to say that I am aware of that and that we're not going to allow people to lose custody of their children or pay more than they should in child support because of some zealous lawyer that just wants to play games with the system. We don't have time for games. The Constitution, our Nevada, Constitution, it says access to speedy justice. Our court rules say access to speedy justice. And I believe whenever possible, speedy justice means let's get this thing done. And, as quickly as possible and as inexpensively as possible so that everyone can get on with life and start healing, especially the children. Yeah.
My question is involving contempt. So I was curious why the difference, if you can be found in contempt in civil court and be held accountable, why wouldn't it be treated the same as criminal court, where if you're in criminal court you have a public defender? I was just kind of wondering why is there that separation?
That is simply a matter of the laws that the legislature has passed in the state of Nevada and in the United States and in the entire country, in the high courts, Supreme Court. It's always been that if you can, do more than a year time in jail, then you have access to a public defense. And otherwise, you're pretty much on your own. And that's just the way the system operates. You do see more and more that people, let's say when they're going to have termination of parental rights, they get assigned a defense counsel. Or when there's children involved that are going to be adopted, and you'll see that they have a children's attorney, project attorney, somebody to protect their rights and listen to their desires and such. So there's some attorney representation in the family courts when there's child protection cases involved, sometimes that are very severe. When it's mixed with a criminal case, you'll have that defense come into the family court as well. But when it is a ordinary divorce and custody and child support case, there's just not enough public defenders to go around. And our legislature has never gotten to the point where they change the laws to give people a right to an attorney.
Okay, well, unless Steve has any more questions, I don't have any more questions for you. Well, actually, it's more of a statement. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate very much you coming in on a Sunday to speak with us. The viewers and listeners understand that, like, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes with political action committees making threats and stuff towards judicial candidates and other candidates. It just, honestly, I really appreciate you coming in. It speaks highly to your character that you're willing to do that. And I think that anytime anybody tries to limit the access you have to voters is a problem. But it speaks highly to your character for coming in. And I want to thank you very much for doing so.
Thank you.
Oh, I would, I'd like to say we're also expressing the same sentiment. We're so happy to have you here. And also, if you could just, tell the voters and look right in the camera, why should we vote for you? Please tell us.
Thank you. I'm looking straight ahead to the voters. So I believe that when I am elected for family court judge, if I am elected for family court judge, my entire goal, since this is the end of my career, I've already had many, many different types of jobs. This is the highlight of my life. This is my legacy to my grandkids. This is my honor for having worked for children and families and worked so hard to get degrees despite being a child that's been on my own since I'm 13 and having many, many challenges in my life like the voters have had in their lives. That I'm going to be the kind of judge that people will say, oh, you got Miss Chevalier, Judge Chevalier. Oh, you're so lucky you got Chevalier. She listens, she cares, she's with you, she's fair. And that is the only reason I want to be a judge. I want to continue to serve the children and families in Nevada as I've been doing since 1990. And I want to be a good judge, an honorable judge, a fair judge, and not one that intimidates people, but one that truly cares and that tries to bring more balance to the judicial decisions that the bench has to make concerning very important matters. Your children, your family, your even for senior citizens that need guardianships and special protection, your property, your lifelong earnings, so that you're well cared for and loved and taken care of. That's the kind of judge I want to be. And that's the reason you should vote Yvette Chevalier-Lopez on June 9th during the primary election for Department I, Clark County Family Court Judge. Thank you. Bravo. Thank you.